Hi, I wanted to welcome you to the Divorce Planning Podcast. I'm Carri Goldring, and I'm in the mortgage business, and I do planning pre-divorce for people who are either going to refinance their home, do an equity buyout, or plan to purchase a new home and make sure that everything in the divorce decree is worded properly and the numbers in the planning is taken care of so that you can go through the underwriting process smoothly. And I would like to introduce you to other people who are interested in the divorce planning process so you can get a real education of what's involved. Hope you enjoy.
Hi, today I have with me Channelle Kizy-White from Kizy Law, and I wanted to say hi and welcome you to the podcast.
Hi, it's great to be here and kind of excited.
Oh, good. I appreciate you doing this with me. And I haven't talked to anyone yet about like the traditional divorce. So a lot of times it seems like we talk about mediation or we talk about collaborative. And I was wondering, one, I guess, will you explain what traditional divorce means? And is there a way that you can tell, or is there something that you watch out for to kind of have an idea what divorce process is best for someone?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different avenues that people can take when they're getting divorced. There is the collaborative process, which is something that does not include the court, and I know that's not the focus of what we're talking about today, so I won't get too much into that. But when people say litigation is really, it could mean that you're going to court and having a judge decide all of your issues, but I also consider arbitration another form of litigation. And arbitration is where you go to a third party who's not a judge, not an elected official, but is still an attorney. And that person essentially plays the role of judge in your case. And the biggest difference is, if I may kind of go into the difference between litigation and traditional litigation through court and arbitrating litigation with an arbitrator, there's a few significant differences. Number one, in litigation through a courthouse, it's entirely public. Anybody can come in, anybody can have access to the recordings. If it's by Zoom, it's recorded. Even if it's not by Zoom, it's still audio recorded, and anybody can access transcripts and the court file. If it's arbitration, then all of the proceedings in the arbitration that are related to the children are recorded, but that's really only recorded for purposes of the arbitrator to reference back to. They're not made public record and cannot be accessed by any third parties. The rest of it is entirely confidential. So if you have a case where you perhaps have some family secrets or family money or just issues that you just don't want made known to the public, and you don't want random people walking in, because sometimes we have nosy neighbors that might show up, which has happened, shockingly, bizarre, but shocking. Apparently people don't have better things to do. But if you don't want that happening, then arbitration is more of a secret way to go. But when I say secret, I don't mean by wrongdoing. It's just more keeping your life, and not sharing it with the whole world. So when you first start a case from the attorney perspective, you don't always know if arbitration or traditional litigation is the right path. We always start off on the regular courthouse litigation path, and as things reveal themselves throughout the process, through the discovery process, one way or another makes itself to feel more appropriate. Another significant difference besides the confidentiality is the cost. Judges are free. Arbitrators, you do pay an hourly rate for, and the apportionment of the fees could be part of what you litigate, but it is a little bit more of an expensive process. So that, depending on your situation, may or may not be the right choice. The other issue, though, is that time frame. People seem to think that arbitration can be a lot faster. What I've now learned over the last few years, at least especially since COVID, it's not always faster. A lot of times it's the same time frame. It takes just as long because it's still difficult to get in dates unless you find an arbitrator that has lots of availability, but you're at the beck and call of the judge or the arbitrator in scheduling. Just as much as judges have busy dockets, so do arbitrators. So that would be, I guess, the differences between those two.
I have a question. So is the arbitrator is someone who could also act as an attorney on a different case, right? They don't always arbitrate.
Correct. Yeah. An arbitrator can wear multiple hats. They can be mediators, arbitrators, and litigators, which means an attorney representing a party.
Okay. And the difference between a mediator and an arbitrator is the mediator is not making any decisions, correct?
Correct. A mediator is just trying to be a middleman negotiator to try to help the parties come to a compromise that they can both live with. And in the end, if the parties don't come to a compromise, the mediator can make a recommendation, but nobody is bound to it. It's just the mediator's thoughts. And in an arbitration, if parties cannot agree, which is usually why they're in arbitration, then the arbitrator will make the final decision.
So if I have someone who's been going back and forth with a settlement agreement and one of the spouses through mitigation is always like, nope, 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 not agreeing to anything at some point, you think someone would say this has to be go to arbitration because we can't keep doing this?
Yeah, and that at some point that does have to happen. The tricky part with the arbitration, though, is it's a voluntary process. So both parties have to be willing to agree to arbitrate. And if they don't, then the default is the regular courthouse litigation and you're stuck with it. And the judges can't force you into arbitration either, because again, it's a cost and you can't be forced to pay for that. Now, if one party volunteers and says, I want to go and I will pay for all of it, you might get an order where the judge says, fine, give it a shot. It's on the other person's dime, because it's a different way to deal with it.
Could they not force you into mediation then as well?
So the courts can force you into mediation once if you're pre-judgment. So before your divorce judgment is filed, then the courts will require you both to attend mediation. And even with that, though, if cost is a concern, because you do pay a mediator, there are cheap alternatives or community alternatives that can be done for free. So it must at least be attempted. There's like in Oakland County, there's Oakland Mediation Services. In Wayne County, there's the Wayne County Dispute Resolution Center. And I know Macomb has one too, and I just can't remember the name of it. But each county typically has their own free mediation service for people that can't afford it.
I'd have to imagine that's a long wait as well.
It can be. And those mediators are volunteer mediators and they're not lawyers. So sometimes it's tough because it's not that all of them are not lawyers, but the majority of them are not lawyers. I've gone through that process, and one time I had a retired accountant, very, very sweet lady, but she was like 80 years old, never been divorced, didn't know anything about it, and the parties came to an agreement on something that wasn't actually legally even possible.
Oh, goodness.
So then that causes, the parties agreed, but the judge is like, I can't order this. It's kind of against the law, but nobody would have known that because there was no lawyers in the process. So it's interesting sometimes.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
There's so much.
You want me to go through the steps of litigation, like
Sure.
discovery, mediation, trial? Okay.
Sure, that'd be great. And all trials have juries or no? That was another question.
Now, so in divorce cases, no trials have juries. There's no
Okay.
such thing as a jury in a family law case.
Okay.
But the natural progression of a divorce case through the court is somebody files, the other party gets served, and then the parties engage in the discovery process. And the discovery process is where both attorneys or both parties will use different tools to do all of the information gathering. So it's all about getting all the information about the other party that you want that would be relevant to the case. And it's not just necessarily financial information. It is bank accounts, credit cards, debts, assets. But if you're fighting about the kids, it's also about, who's taking the children where, who's helping with homework, getting witness statements for how people parent, if there's ever been, abuse investigations or things like that. Anything related to parenting and what would impact parenting would also be gathered during this discovery phase. After the discovery phase is complete, the parties are required to go to mediation. The attorneys typically will need to agree upon a mediator, and if you can't agree, the judge will force you to usually go to, like I just talked about, the free community center type mediation places. And then after mediation, if you're still not resolved, hopefully you are, if you're still not resolved, then you ultimately go to trial. And trial is a cluster. It's not typically to anybody's benefit to go through that whole process besides the emotional trauma and just the toll that it takes and how you're just listening to people bicker about each other and talk about how the other person sucks the whole time. Nobody usually leaves happy. And I know that the topic of this session is, when is litigation better? And in all reality, very rare, in my opinion, to just kind of, I'm answering that question probably ahead of the game, but it is rare when full litigation is better. It is good to partially litigate. When I say that, I mean at least get through the discovery phase and mediation. But only in cases, I would say, where there's either like complex financial issues, or someone feels that they're not protected, or perhaps domestic violence situations. Those would be cases where you have the protection of the court and you need that layer of protection and neutrality. And that is truly better. But when I say better, there's a difference of, like, I could say I just had this happen yesterday, actually. I had a mediation last night that went pretty long, and I knew in my heart of hearts that if we were to take this case to trial, my client, I would be willing to bet so much money that we could do better financially in court. Her husband wanted her to take a $20,000 hit on an equalization payment. He owed her $26,000 more actually than she took. And I was like, why would you give up all of that money? That's a lot of money. Why give it up? But, and clients will say this, and I say it too, sometimes the emotional trauma of dealing with the process and having it hang over your head, ultimately, thankfully, she had a good job and she's like, I'll recover in a couple of years from the financial hit, but I don't know that I would recover from the emotional trauma he's going to put me through if we go to trial. And so it's her decision. And I made sure that she made it clear that I was advising her not to do it, but she wanted to cover my own tail. But sometimes that's what we have to figure too. There is the emotional piece and stress, that there is a value on that. So people will often give up what they may be entitled to. And in that case, litigation would have been better financially for her, but not have been better emotionally.
Right. And then maybe some people say traditional litigated, but really you could do traditional, somebody could file, but it doesn't necessarily mean it goes to litigation. It just might go to a judge, right?
Yeah, and those are the best cases where people come in and say, we think we know what we want to do, just draw up the paperwork. And so we are still going through the courthouse, and you could call it litigation, but it doesn't mean that it's negative fighting, knockdown, drag out type litigation.
Right. That makes sense. And then does anyone ever like come in and say they can't wait to get to court and they have to, fight and complain, and then you have to kind of talk them down?
Yes. So and this is a personal opinion, all good attorneys try to keep level heads, because going to court is not about trying to hurt the other person the most, especially when there's kids involved, because hurting the other person is really hurting your children, and people don't always see that. So you gain nothing by making the other person look bad. You gain nothing. Michigan's a no fault state, to top it all off, which means, if you're angry because of the reason of the breakdown of the marriage, because someone cheated or did something really crappy to you, that's something you deal with in therapy, not to drag the people out in court. And if you want to come in, if someone comes in and tells me, and this has happened, I want to file for a divorce like in a few months, what can I do now to hide my money so my wife can't get it? And that kind of a concept. I'm not the right attorney for that. I'll tell you that now. But it's better to be open and honest and just deal with your lumps. Life is what it is. God gave us certain situations, and you need to figure out the way to navigate through it. Being unfair and trying to hide things, in my opinion, and the way that I practice, is not the best form. And I believe in karma, so it's probably going to come back and bite you. But yes, talking people off a ledge is a lot of what we do. But the negativity and the anger fuels the litigation. And there are several attorneys that enjoy that and want to do that. And I just don't see an ultimate benefit in the end.
Right. Do you feel like it's changing at all? Like it used to be more of attorneys drag out, fight, nitpick, and it's slowly changing into something different? Or do you think it's just a certain group of attorneys that really try to just do things the nicer way, I guess is a better way to say it?
So there's two parts to that. I think there are certain attorneys that have that personality and that's their nature. They've been that way. They've always been that way. That's their reputation. Whatever it is, it's just a situation of you want to hire the attorney that best fits your personality. But in terms of whether it's gotten nastier over time or kinder over time, what's really been going on, I think COVID was a huge change to the industry. Huge change to the industry. People were, I would say, and I'm speaking very generally, I get that, but very much more like level-headed and logical in terms of spending money and determining what things were worth it and not. Like, for example, people would not spend $1,000 to chase 200. They wouldn't spend 5,000 to chase 7,000 because it's the cost benefit really. But nowadays, since COVID, and I can't believe it's still going on because COVID's almost 5 years in our window here. People will spend, 1,000 they'll spend 10 grand to chase 200. And I don't know if all of a sudden everybody's rich. I didn't fall into that wagon, but apparently everybody else did.
Me neither.
But COVID either gave them a lot of money, or I really think people have lost their freaking minds and just lost all logic. And they're just willing, there's a lot more pettiness and a lot more anger as like a general undertone, where pre-COVID, people had more compassion and willingness to compromise. Now it's a lot of righteousness and selfishness and pride and pettiness. And
why you're right. Now that you say that, I feel that you are very, very right. And I have seen that a lot. And I don't know why, unless we're just not around people very much. So you lose your compassion.
That's what I'm guessing. I'm like, because people like to be alone now because we were trapped for so long. Then everyone's trapped in our own thoughts. And then we're trapped with our phones and social media, and you're feeding into whatever's in your algorithm. You're just getting,
you're stuck with it, right?
Yeah. And you're just getting more and more of it. So if you're already negative, then you're just going to get more and more and more and more negative. Like, I don't know. I have 0 degree. I'm not an expert analyst in any of that, but just in terms of trends, it's really tough. And sometimes it's tough to manage as an attorney, like client expectations being unrealistic is sometimes tough to deal with.
Right. And I think people feel unorganized and more anxious, and
yes,
the whole process is very overwhelming.
And that's a really good point. The anxiety levels and just the nervousness of everybody. And, my client phone calls used to be on average like 5-10 minutes, maybe each. I mean, we have regular daily calls with people that are 30 to 45 minutes. Like, it's just lots of the same conversation over and over, and the reassurance and I guess therapists are so overbooked that we are attorneys and counselors. Counselors does come into play more as divorce attorneys, but it's an emotional toll. It's tough.
It is. Then they probably don't give you a lot of psychology classes as you go through law school.
No, but that's not a bad idea, actually, for them to throw in the psychology of a divorce, client or something like that. And it is just mostly our area of law, I would think, like business litigants and, maybe criminal defense would probably run into that too. But this is your everyday lives, right? Like, we're dealing with people's literal everyday lives. If they go to the grocery store and the credit card gets denied, like, holy crap, I have to call my lawyer. If there's somebody was supposed to take their kid to a game and their kid doesn't get there, they're going to call their lawyer. Oh, look, he can't get them to their game on time. Why am I doing all the running around? Like, day-to-day tasks. Not always, my legal brain is not always needed. Sometimes it's just the logical brain. But
or your mother brain, right?
Yes, exactly. But it's fun.
Of that, do you have to answer your phone all hours of the night? Like, are you on call 24/7, 7 days a week?
So I could be if I wanted to be. I've kind of gotten to a point where I'm more comfortable just not answering the phone late unless it's an emergency. I will still monitor because I do have calls for my situation. I have calls forwarded to my cell phone at all hours. but only if I know there's an emergent situation or something that needs to be tended to, I'll pick up. And if it's really crazy, they leave a voicemail, I'll check my voicemails and if it's something. But it's becoming less and less over time. And there's a good point that I've just recently learned. Sometimes the emergency, if you don't respond as an attorney right away, it settles itself out. Like people call their attorney within seconds. If people would institute the 24-hour rule that we as parents have to do, like when we get pissed off at our kids' coaches, and in athletics, they tell you 24-hour rule before you come to us and complain that your kid's not getting enough playing time, or you're pissed about a call, you have to wait 24 hours before you talk to us. That would be great if we could have that same rule, because we'd probably get a lot less calls.
Right. It's probably true. But I think because you have that legal component, I think it gets a little scarier because you just don't know, right? Like you just feel so out of control.
Yeah. No, and everything is spiraling around you, and what do you do? So
right. It's tough. And
for sure.
Did you fall into family law, or was that the goal from the get-go?
So I totally fell into it, shockingly. I went to school to be a business litigator. I thought I was going to be negotiating high, like multi-million dollar contract disputes. So that's what I went to school for. When I graduated, the only job I could get was with a local criminal defense attorney. So I just took it. It's the only internship I could get while I was in law school. Mm-hmm. And I took it and I fell in love with it. Didn't think I would, but so I was like, okay, maybe I'll do criminal defense. Well, I ended up working there after I graduated, loved it. But deep down, I was like, oh, I always wanted to be this business litigator. So I felt like I had to pursue my passion, and I went and got a job as a business litigator for 2 years, maybe. I hated it. Hated everything about it, and I wasn't very good at it. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going back out on my own now at this point. I'm going to do the criminal defense thing. And one of my criminal defense clients was going through a divorce because of the case. And he asked if I would help. And I said, I've never done it before, but if you're willing to give it a shot and be my first one, he said, yep, no problem. So of course I did it as a discounted rate, and then ended up shockingly falling in love with that. And like one referral led to another, and I fell into it.
And that's pretty much all you do now, right?
Yeah. I've been doing law for 18 years, but primarily family law for like 12.
That's so right. Yeah, it seems like most people in this field fall into it in one way, shape or form.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is it does annoy me that every attorney thinks family law is the easiest area of law. Oh, anybody can do it. It's all just touchy-feely law.
Right.
But what nobody realizes is, like, as a family law attorney, you touch everything. You have to know about wills and estates if there's probate issues. You have to know tax law when there's tax issues. You have to know about financing and business issues when people are dividing property. And you have to know about so many different areas of law. They all fall into everything. Like, and thankfully we have people like you who, like, you've changed my world in a very positive way, knowing that there's truly intricacies in even a refinancing or language that has to be in there that attorneys that don't do this all the time don't know, and that stuff doesn't get included. And then it's an oh shit moment, later for people when they're like, oh, well, it seemed right at the time, but they don't know what their attorney doesn't know.
Right. Whenever I have an opportunity to talk to any judges at any functions, they always say a lot of post judgment is regarding the house. It's either the kids or the house. Those are the two.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's nice to have the piece of, I'm not going to lie, knowing that I have Carri to, like, just quick call, hey, we're trying to do spousal support. How many months do I need to do again before the refi, or what amount does it have to be? So as a blessing, you are a blessing.
I'm so glad. I am so glad. I love being helpful and educating everyone, and I really get to feel like I make a difference, even though it's a very teeny weeny piece of the whole puzzle.
Yeah.
It gives me a lot of pleasure to do what I get to do.
You might think it's teeny weeny in size, but the consequences of not having that teeny weeny piece
It's very
are
big.
catastrophic. It's like the princess and the pea. It's a
That is
little pea that causes a lot of pain.
that is very, very true. And my favorite story about that is when I had someone who wanted to refinance and stay in her home. And the opposing counsel said, we are not doing that until the divorce is final. Have to wait, have to wait. So her attorney said, no big deal, we're gonna wait. And then we waited, the divorce was final, she went to refinance, and lo and behold, because title went from tenancy entireties to tenancy in common, the 20 some odd $1,000 judgment that the husband had transferred to the house, and when she refinanced, she had to pay it off.
Oh, she was angry.
It's not
Ultimately,
happy.
was she able to recover it from the husband in the end?
No, she was not. I was able to call the creditor though and explain the situation, and I greatly got the amount reduced, and we were able to pay it off with the refinance. But if they would have let the refinance happen prior to the divorce being final, she would have never had that.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, teeny weeny things, right, that make, like you
Yeah.
said.
And $20,000 is a lot of money. That's
A
a
lot of
lot of money. I could do a lot of things with that.
Right, right.
So-
A lot of people could, yes. I always wonder if the attorney knew what he was doing.
Like
Or
the other
if
attorney, the
the
husband.
yeah, the opposing attorney. I don't think her attorney thought it through enough. And
Yeah.
obviously it made me a lot more aware of things.
How long ago was that?
So it was so long ago, but I still remember, I think it was the very beginning of COVID that happened.
Yeah. Don't you find that like the strongest and greatest lessons that I learn are really on mistakes? Because
Oh, for sure.
won't make the same mistake again after the trauma of the blowback.
No, yeah, it's the best learning, right? Even though, boy, do I hate it when it's happening. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, we're all human, right? I see it. I had a case yesterday where the attorney knew that there were property taxes due on the property for all of 2024, but when the judgment got written, they only said winter property taxes for 24. So we just got our title work back, and it said it was delinquent. I was totally ready to collect it from my client because I'm following the judgment. And then at the last minute, the attorney called and said, oh my God, I made a mistake. And I'm going to write a check to the title company for the taxes because I forgot to put it in the judgment. And it's
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
we're all human.
thank God he was good like that. I probably would have done the same, just wait to
Yeah.
avoid a lawsuit or anything else. Like, oh crap. But
Right. And
yeah.
the other spouse was an attorney, not a family law attorney, but I'm sure when he signed that judgment, he knew it was left out and what was happening.
For sure. For sure.
He paid that late fee really, really fast. When I called to say, well, how are you paying your half of the taxes? Says, oh, they're already paid. I'm done. I'll show you proof. When are we closing?
My goodness. This is so classic. So
right.
classic.
So all those weird little things that you don't expect, right? That no normal everyday person would know unless this is your job.
Yeah. And going back to the point in the topic of the segment is with litigation, when you're litigating before a judge, they often do not rule on any of the intricacies. They just rule on the big picture and the big items. And so these little things fall through the cracks. And to be quite honest, when you go through a trial and then you have to draft a judgment based on a court's decision, anything that they didn't specifically rule on, they say that you can't include. And you almost kind of ultimately screw yourself by not being able to get a ruling on like the thing that you were just talking about, and even if it's just taxes, if they just say taxes but don't specify, and it's frustrating. It's very frustrating for
Devil's
everybody.
in the detail, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't get any detail. Well, that would be one main thing for sure. I mean, the privacy thing I think is huge.
Yeah.
And also the fact that you don't get to really narrow down the details would have to be huge because things can be interpreted so
Right.
different.
Yeah,
True.
completely.
Well, it's great to finally get to talk to you.
Yes. Thank you for waiting for me and my voice to recover.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
no problem. Well, thank you for doing this with me. If anyone wants to get a hold of you, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
So the best way is probably by phone to call me at the office. It's 248-662-5499. And then they can give you my email. Email is fine too, but it's probably too long to throw out on this. But phone number is a good start.
All right, wonderful. Well, I thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great. And I'm sure I'll see you soon.
For sure.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I'm Carri Goldring, and if you ever have any questions regarding mortgage, feel free to give me a call or send me a text message, 248-420-4524. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.